I still remember standing in my kitchen, just 3 days before my wedding. My dad was there, looking like he was about to serve me a court summons, and his words hit me like a slap. "We need you to cancel your honeymoon and watch your sister's kids." He said it right in front of Olivia, my fiancée, and our wedding planner, who was on speakerphone. Like it was the most normal thing in the world to draft me into unpaid labor when I was literally trying to finalize seating charts. To truly understand how we even got to that moment, I have to take you back a bit. I grew up in a house where love felt less like an emotion and more like a transaction. My dad, David, spent decades working for the county, and that do-your-duty energy bled into every part of his life, especially his parenting. My mom, Sarah, was a nurse. She could be warm in private, but in public, our family was a brand, and it had to look flawless. Then there was my sister, Chloe. She's 2 years older than me, and she's always been the absolute center of our family's universe. Loud, beautiful, dramatic, and somehow always embroiled in a new crisis that demanded immediate funding, babysitting, emotional support, or usually, all three. Me? I was the quiet kid who did his homework without being asked, who stayed out of trouble, who just kept his head down. Adults love that kind of kid because you can pretty much ignore him, and he'll still turn out fine. One of my earliest memories, I must have been 8, was sitting at the kitchen table. I'd made this science fair project out of cardboard and glue, and I was so proud I could barely sit still. Chloe burst in, crying because she didn't get the lead in a school play. My mom didn't even glance at my project. She swept Chloe into a hug, cooing, "My poor baby." And my dad, he just looked at me and said, "Alex, clean up your mess. Your sister needs us." It was always framed like that. Chloe needs. Alex can handle. When I was 15, I made the varsity soccer team. My dad promised he'd come to my first home game. He never showed. Chloe had a panic attack because a boy didn't text her back, so my parents took her for ice cream, calling it family time. The next day, my dad patted my shoulder and said, "You're tough. Your sister is sensitive." At 17, I got a scholarship offer to a really good engineering program. I still remember holding the letter, scared it might just float away. My parents were happy for exactly 60 seconds, until Chloe announced she wanted to find herself at a private college out of state that cost a fortune. Suddenly, my scholarship wasn't a win, it was convenient. It meant they could pour money into Chloe and call it balanced parenting. The only person who ever said the quiet part out loud was my Uncle Arthur, my mom's older brother. He wasn't rich or flashy. He owned a small auto shop and always smelled faintly of motor oil and peppermint gum. He'd look at me over his coffee and say things like, "You're not a spare tire, Alex. Don't let them keep you in the trunk." I used to laugh, thinking it was a weird joke, but he was the first adult who ever made me feel seen instead of just managed. Fast forward a bit. I did the whole responsible kid thing. Worked hard, got my degree, moved to the Atlanta area, and climbed my way into a role that made my parents proud in the only way they understood, a job title. I'm an engineer by training, but I shifted into HR and operations because I'm good at people systems, compliance, and fixing broken processes. I work for an international company with offices across North America and Asia. My job is basically half technical and half keeping humans from suing each other. It's stressful, but it pays well, and I'm good at it. I live in Atlanta now, in a row house I'm slowly turning into a home instead of just a crash pad. My fiancée, Olivia, is the kind of person who actually enjoys planning. She planned our wedding like she was building a small, beautiful universe. I just had to show up and not mess it up, which, apparently, is too much to ask if you're my family. As I got older, the family pattern shifted from emotional favoritism to outright financial dependence. It started small, like it always does. When I was 24, my dad called and said, "Chloe is short on rent just for this month. You know how expensive everything is." I sent $600. It felt like the adult thing to do. 2 months later, it was Chloe's car needs repairs. She can't get to work. I sent $900. Then it was, your mother's credit card got a little high because of medical bills. I sent $1,200. I started noticing that medical bills somehow included spa visits and boutique receipts when my mom accidentally emailed me the wrong attachment once. When I asked about it, she got offended and said, "Are you auditing your own mother after everything we've done for you?" That phrase, "after everything we've done for you," was like a key that unlocked guilt on demand. Chloe eventually married a guy named Mark. He played the role of charming provider in public and confused, helpless man in private. They had 2 kids, Mia and Leo, and suddenly every conversation became about childcare. Chloe would call me crying because she was overwhelmed. By the end of the call, I'd be committing to taking the kids on Saturday so she could rest, and also sending money because Mark's paycheck got delayed. Mark's paycheck was always delayed, like it had a personal grudge. One year, I added it up. Between random transfers, paying for emergencies, and covering family shortfalls, I had sent about $24,700 in 10 months. That number made me feel sick. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because I hadn't even noticed it leaving. It was like a financial bleeding you don't see until the floor is slippery. I started keeping records. Nothing dramatic, just a spreadsheet, dates, amounts, who asked, what they said it was for. Uncle Arthur would call me on Sundays and ask how work was going. One day, I mentioned the spreadsheet like it was a joke. He didn't laugh. "Good," he said. "Paper beats poetry. Feelings won't save you when they rewrite history." At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant. I would. When Olivia and I got engaged, I thought, stupidly, that maybe the family dynamic would soften. Weddings make people sentimental, right? They talk about love and unity. They get teary. They behave. My family treated my engagement like an opportunity to negotiate my time and money. My mom's first question wasn't about Olivia's ring or our plans. It was, "Will you make sure Olivia has a role? She'll be devastated if she's not important." My dad's first question was, "How much are you spending? Don't be wasteful." Meanwhile, my parents had just helped Chloe upgrade to a bigger house because the kids needed a yard. They didn't have the money, but they had the confidence. The down payment was a loan from my parents' retirement account, which I found out about because my dad casually mentioned it, and then asked me in the same breath if I could help replenish their savings. I asked Olivia what she wanted our boundaries to look like because she's smarter than me in the ways that matter. She said, "Your family treats you like a resource. I don't want our marriage to start with me watching you get drained." We agreed on something simple. We would pay for our wedding ourselves. We wouldn't borrow, and we wouldn't let anyone attach strings. We also booked our honeymoon early because it was the one thing we both wanted to be truly ours. No opinions, no committee, no family needs. Fiji wasn't a random choice. Olivia has a photo of those turquoise lagoons taped inside her childhood journal. She grew up in a small apartment and used to say she'd swim in water that looked like glass one day. So, we did it. We saved. We planned. We paid the deposits. Between flights, resort transfers, and excursions, the total was right around $23,600. Non-refundable past a certain date, which was, you guessed it, right before our wedding. The week of the wedding arrived like a wave. Last-minute meetings, final fittings, calls with vendors. My job was also in one of those chaotic periods where every global office suddenly remembered HR exists. So, I was juggling compliance fires while trying to pretend I was calm. 72 hours before the wedding, my dad called. Not texted, called, which in my family meant something was serious. I answered because I was still that kid who cleaned up the mess to keep the peace. He didn't say hello. He said, "We need you to cancel your honeymoon and watch your sister's kids." I actually laughed at first, because it was so ridiculous my brain treated it like a joke for self-defense. "What?" I said. "Chloe scheduled her surgery for next week." He said, "Family emergency." Olivia froze mid-step in our living room. She was holding place cards. I said, surgery? What surgery? My dad's voice got sharper, like my questions were disrespect. It's private. She needs support. Mark has work. Your mother and I have appointments. You're the only option. I was staring at Olivia, and she was staring back with that look that says, please don't do it. Please don't reflexively do it. I said, Dad, we're getting married in 3 days. I know, he said. That's why you have time. You can reschedule the honeymoon. Just call and move it. And if you can't, then you'll eat the cost. That's what family does. That was the first moment something in me clicked into place. He wasn't asking, he was assigning. And he was comfortable spending my money in his head. I said, no. The silence on the line was immediate and heavy, like I'd slapped him. Then he did what he always does when he thinks he's losing control. He escalated. This is a test of loyalty, Alex, he said. You can't start your marriage by abandoning your sister. Olivia's mouth actually opened like she couldn't believe someone would say that out loud. I said, a test of loyalty, slowly tasting the phrase. Okay. My dad heard something in my voice and tried a different angle. Your mother is very upset, he said. She says Olivia is changing you. I looked at Olivia. She didn't say a word. She just waited, like she was letting me decide who I wanted to be. I said, what surgery is it? My dad hesitated. Just a fraction reconstruction, he said. And that word was so carefully chosen, it made my skin crawl. It sounded serious. It sounded noble. It sounded like a way to shame me if I didn't comply. But I've worked in HR long enough to know that when someone gets vague, it's because specifics would ruin the story. I said, send me the details. What hospital? What doctor? What paperwork? If it's a family emergency, I need to know what I'm walking into. He snapped, don't interrogate me. I said, then don't draft me. He hung up. 5 minutes later, my mom called, crying so hard it sounded performative, like she was reading a script she'd rehearsed. Alex, please, she said. Your sister is scared. I said, what's the surgery? She doesn't want everyone to know. My mom sobbed. I said, Mom, I'm not canceling my honeymoon blind. What's the surgery? There was a pause, and then a softer voice in the background. Chloe, she didn't sound scared. She sounded annoyed. Tellin' it's my mommy makeover, she said, like she was ordering coffee. My mom hissed something at her like she'd said it too loud. I blinked. Mommy makeover? I repeated. Chloe grabbed the phone. It's not your business, Alex. It's elective, yes, but I need it. My body is ruined. Mark isn't attracted to me anymore. I almost lost my temper right then, but what I felt more than anger was clarity. Chloe, I said, you want me to cancel a $23,600 honeymoon 3 days before my wedding to babysit because you booked cosmetic surgery? She snapped. It's not cosmetic. It's medical for my mental health. That's not how insurance codes work, I said, and then immediately regretted speaking like HR. My mom came back on the line and tried the guilt again. Alex, your sister has done so much for you. I laughed, but it came out sad. Name one thing. My mom went quiet because we both knew the answer. Then my dad called back, not to apologize, to threaten. If you don't do this, he said, don't expect us to show up for you. Something in me felt weirdly calm. Dad, I said, you're already not showing up for me. You're trying to take. He started yelling about respect, about family, about duty. And I let him talk because I wanted to hear the shape of the truth. It wasn't love. It was entitlement. While he was talking, I opened my spreadsheet. I scrolled. I saw the transfers. I saw the patterns. I saw myself shrinking year after year to keep them comfortable. Uncle Arthur's words came back. Paper beats poetry. I texted him one sentence. They want me to cancel honeymoon to babysit for Chloe's cosmetic surgery. He called immediately. Put it on speaker, he said. So I did. My dad was still lecturing me when Uncle Arthur's voice cut through. David, Arthur said, are you out of your mind? There was a stunned pause. My dad hated being challenged, especially by someone he considered beneath him. This is family business, my dad snapped. It became family business when you tried to steal his honeymoon, Arthur said. Alex is not your employee. He is not your nanny. He is not your bank. My mom tried to cry again. Arthur, don't make this worse. Arthur said, Sarah, it's already worse. You're asking your son to pay the price for your daughter's vanity. Chloe screeched. It's not vanity. Arthur ignored her. Alex, he said, tell them no and send me your records. My dad barked. Records? What records? And that right there was the moment I realized they'd never expected me to keep proof. They expected me to be grateful for scraps of approval and too ashamed to track the cost. I looked at Olivia. Her eyes were shiny, but she wasn't crying. She looked proud and exhausted, like she'd been holding her breath for years and finally exhaled. My dad said, Alex, this is your last chance. Do you choose your sister or do you choose selfishness? He actually said selfishness like my marriage was a hobby. And I could have argued. I could have explained. I could have begged them to understand, but I didn't want understanding anymore. I wanted freedom. So, I smiled, even though they couldn't see it through the phone, because the smile was for me. I said, you said it's a test of loyalty. Yes, my dad said. I said, I failed. Then I hung up. I blocked my dad. Then my mom, then Chloe, then Mark, then the aunt who always texted, family is everything, right after asking for money. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, like I'd finally stepped off a ledge I'd been standing on my whole life. Olivia whispered, are you okay? I said, I don't know, but I'm done. The next 72 hours were a blur. My family didn't show up to the rehearsal dinner. They didn't help. They didn't send a message. They had clearly decided that their absence was punishment. But the funny thing about boundaries is that once you stop asking for permission, punishment loses its teeth. My friends showed up. Olivia's parents showed up. Uncle Arthur showed up in a suit that didn't quite fit, and a tie he clearly hated. He stood next to me like a guardrail. The wedding itself was beautiful. Small enough to feel real. Big enough to feel like a celebration. When I looked out at the chairs and didn't see my parents, I felt a pinch of grief, because you always grieve the family you wanted. But then Olivia took my hand and squeezed, and I felt the truth of what I was building. After the wedding, we got on a plane. Fiji felt like stepping into someone else's dream. The air was warm and salty, and the water was so clear it looked fake. Olivia cried when we first saw the lagoon from the boat, and then she laughed at herself for crying, and then I laughed too because I'd never seen her that free. We took photos on the overwater bungalow deck. We ate fruit that tasted like sunlight. We swam at night with the lights under the water glowing like a private galaxy. On the second day, Olivia posted a picture of us in the water, her head on my shoulder, both of us sunburned and smiling like idiots. I didn't think about my phone. I didn't check. I didn't care. Then later that afternoon, I opened it out of habit. 147 missed calls, dozens of voicemails, texts from numbers I hadn't blocked yet because apparently my family had recruited cousins like a call center. One message from my mom from a new number said, "How could you do this to your sister? She is in pain. You're ruining the family." One from Chloe said, "If something goes wrong in surgery, it will be your fault. I hope Olivia is worth it." Another from my dad said, "When you come back, you will apologize. You will make this right." And there it was again. The assumption. The ownership. Olivia saw my face and said, "What is it?" I handed her my phone. She read the messages quietly. Then she looked up and said, Do you want to respond? I said, no. I blocked the new numbers. We went back into the water. I won't pretend I didn't think about them. I did. At night when it was quiet, I imagined my mom telling people a story where I was the villain. I imagined my dad's anger fermenting. I imagined Chloe making herself the tragic heroine in a situation she created. But I also imagined something else. I imagined what it would feel like to stop being available for being used. When we got back to Atlanta, reality hit like cold air. There were more calls, more messages, more family members suddenly very invested in Unity. One cousin wrote, "Your parents are devastated. They paid for everything for you growing up." I almost replied with my entire childhood in one paragraph, but Arthur's voice echoed in my head again. Paper beats poetry. So, I sent one sentence. Please direct any further communication to my attorney. Yes, I got an attorney. Not because I plan to sue them for emotional damage or anything dramatic like that. I got an attorney because I've learned that people who feel entitled to you don't stop at guilt. They escalate. They show up at your house. They call your job. They try to create consequences. My attorney helped me draft a simple notice. No contact, no harassment, no showing up at my home or workplace, and any attempts would be documented. Uncle Arthur also helped me do something practical. We went through my financial records and closed every open pipe. The family phone plan I'd been paying for because it was easier? Gone. The monthly help payment my mom claimed was for utilities? Gone. The credit card I'd co-signed years ago because my dad said it would build family credit? Closed. And then we did the hardest part. We pulled my bank statements and matched every transfer to the spreadsheet. It was worse than I remembered. In the last 2 years alone, I'd sent just under $25,000. That 22 to 25K range I used to vaguely estimate in my head wasn't me being dramatic. It was real. It was money that could have gone to my own emergency fund, my own home repairs, my own future kids. When I saw it all lined up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt embarrassed. Not because I helped, but because I let helping become my identity. My family reacted exactly how you'd expect. First came rage. My dad left a voicemail from an unknown number calling me ungrateful and saying he'd never forgive me. Then came bargaining. My mom tried to show up at my house on a Saturday morning with pastries, like she was resetting the scene. Olivia opened the door, stepped outside, and closed it behind her, which is a small thing that somehow meant everything. She didn't invite my mom in. She didn't offer a chair. She just stood on the porch, calm. My mom said, "I just want to talk to my son." Olivia said, "You can talk to his attorney." My mom's face twisted like Olivia had slapped her. "You're turning him against us." Olivia didn't raise her voice. "No, you did that." My mom started crying, and Olivia didn't move. My mom finally left, furious that tears didn't work. Then the relatives who took their side arrived. An aunt, a family friend, someone who hadn't said my name in years, all suddenly concerned. They all used the same lines. "Your parents are older. Your sister has children. Family is family. You'll regret it." I started answering the same way every time. "I'm not discussing it. Please talk to my attorney." It made people so mad, which was honestly how I knew it was working. They didn't want a boundary. They wanted a debate they could win with guilt. The weirdest moment came 2 months later when I found out through a cousin who still spoke to me that Chloe's surgery went fine. Not life-saving, not tragic. Fine. She posted selfies after her recovery, talking about healing and self-love. And in the comments, she hinted about toxic people who don't support mothers. I stared at the screen and realized something that changed how I saw everything. My sister didn't want support. She wanted control over the narrative. She wanted the power of making me jump. My dad didn't want family unity. He wanted obedience. My mom didn't want peace. She wanted appearances. And I didn't want to be the guy who funded and fixed their choices while they treated me like a disposable tool. The last time I heard my dad's voice was through my attorney. He wanted to mediate, which in my family means you apologize and we pretend nothing happened. My attorney told him no. After that, it got quieter. Not magically, not all at once, but quieter. Olivia and I started living like we weren't waiting for the next emotional invoice. We cooked dinner without checking our phones every 5 minutes. We spent weekends doing boring, happy things like walking through farmers' markets and arguing about paint colors. Uncle Arthur came over one Sunday and helped me fix a stubborn cabinet hinge. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just worked beside me in comfortable silence. At one point, he leaned back, wiped his hands, and said, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. I thought about Fiji water and 147 missed calls. I thought about my dad's test of loyalty. I thought about my mom's tears like a weapon. I thought about my sister's entitlement dressed up as emergency. And I said the honest thing. I feel lighter, I told him. And I hate that it took this long. Arthur nodded. It takes as long as it takes. That night, Olivia and I sat at our small dining table and signed papers for something boring and adult, updating beneficiaries, organizing our accounts, making sure our future was protected. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic, but it felt like peace. I used to think walking away meant I was cruel. That it meant I was giving up. That it meant I was failing some invisible exam everyone else passed naturally. Now I see it differently. Walking away wasn't revenge. It was survival. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're truth with consequences. And real family isn't who can demand the most from you. It's who shows up with respect. Who treats your life like it belongs to you. I didn't go to Fiji to spite anyone. I went because I was getting married, and I chose my wife, my future, and my own self-respect. If that meant I failed their test, then honestly, good. I choose who gets a front row seat in my life. Have you ever had a moment where you realized family emergency was really code for your life doesn't count?